The desert had learned to keep its secrets. Wind swept over the long stretch of sand and sagebrush, carrying the smell of iron dust and the faint echo of hoofbeats that never came. The signpost stood at the crossroads, an old wooden arrow nailed to a weather-worn pole, pointing east toward the town of Clearwater. Beneath it, the earth was stamped with years of wagon wheels and memories. He stood there again. Elias Ward, the man the frontier had turned into stone. They called him the Ranger now, though he never asked for the name. His hat shadowed eyes that had watched too much. Bandits burned in sunfire duels, outlaws begging for mercy, good men buried under unmarked stones. But this place, the arrow sign, was the one that still hurt him, because this was where she had left him 7 years ago. He had come back every spring, always the same day, when the wind carried the scent of the wild bluebonnets from the North Ridge. He didn't know why anymore. Maybe because hope was harder to kill than a man. The creak of leather broke the silence. A horse neighed faintly in the distance. He turned, his hand instinctively falling to the worn handle of his Colt, though something inside told him he already knew the sound of that gait. The rider slowed, dust rising around the figure like a ghost. When she stopped, the sun caught her veil, and for a long moment neither moved. "Elias," she said softly, her voice trembling with the desert heat. It had been 7 years, but he could still hear every heartbeat in her name. He didn't speak. He couldn't. He just watched her dismount, slow, careful, as if stepping down into memory itself. Her dress was pale, travel-stained, and her boots were not those of a rancher's wife. But her eyes, those green eyes, had not changed. Lydia Kane, the woman who had walked away when the world was still young and gentle. She held her reins loosely, looking at the old arrow sign. "I wasn't sure it would still be here," she said quietly. He finally spoke, his voice rough from years of silence. "The desert don't move much. Only people do." A flicker passed between them, something too small to call a smile, too painful to name. "I didn't think you'd still be here," she whispered. "I ain't," he said. "Just the shadow of me." The wind sighed through the mesquite trees, carrying the low rattle of dry seeds like bones. For a while, they stood in that silence, the kind that holds everything unsaid. They walked toward the old watering trough by the road, where the spring still trickled from a crack in the rock. She bent to cup her hands, drinking slowly, while he leaned on the post, watching her with the same quiet disbelief he'd once had when he first fell in love. "Why'd you come back, Lydia?" he asked at last. Her hands froze. The water spilled through her fingers. "I had to see you. That all." His tone was flat, but there was a tremor behind it. She took a shaky breath. "I owe you an apology, Elias. Maybe more than one." He turned away, facing the horizon. "You had your reasons. You chose your life. I chose wrong." He said nothing. "I married for safety," she continued. "For my family. For my father's debts. I thought I could live with that, but—" her voice cracked. "He's gone now. The ranch, the money, everything. And I—" Elias didn't turn. His fingers tightened around the post until splinters bit into his palm. "And you thought maybe the man you left behind would still be standing here waiting?" Tears welled up in her eyes, glistening against the dust. "No," she whispered. "I didn't think that. I hoped he wouldn't be." He finally turned then, slowly, his eyes darker than the storm clouds that never came. "What do you want from me, Lydia?" "Just to tell you the truth," she said, "and maybe to hear you forgive me." The word forgive hung in the air like smoke. He looked down, jaw working. "I used to pray for that," he murmured, "for the day I could see you again and not feel this fire burning in my chest. Thought maybe forgiveness would come easy after a few years. But it don't." She stepped closer, close enough that he could smell the lilac oil in her hair, just like before. "Then hate me," she whispered, "if that's what's left." "I tried that too," he said, and his voice broke. "Didn't work neither." The sky began to change, streaked with amber and rose, painting the land like an old photograph. The arrow sign creaked in the wind. Lydia looked up at it, tracing the faded words with her fingers. "It still points toward Clearwater," she said softly. "Strange, isn't it? How something that's been through storms and years still points the same way. Elias's gaze followed her hand. Signs don't forget their purpose. She looked at him. Do people? He didn't answer. They sat near the rocks as twilight deepened. Lydia pulled off her gloves, revealing thin, scarred hands. He noticed, but said nothing. I never told you, she began, voice low. The night I left, my father had come with 2 men. They said if I didn't marry Cal Monroe by dawn, they'd take the ranch. You'd already been marked Elias. They knew you were riding out to stop a smuggler near the border. They planned to kill you on the trail. Elias frowned, his head lowering. You could have told me. I tried, but you wouldn't have let me go. You'd have stayed and died for me, and I couldn't bear that. He let out a slow breath. So you broke me instead. Her eyes shimmered. It was the only way I could save you. The desert fell silent around them. Coyotes howled far off. A lone tumbleweed drifted past the arrow sign, like a forgotten memory. He spoke again, softer now. All those years I thought you just got tired of me. Thought I wasn't enough. You were everything, she said fiercely. I just wasn't brave enough. He looked at her then, really looked, past the lines of age and sorrow, into the heart that had once made his world worth living. 7 years, he said. You know how long that is out here. I do, she whispered. Every night of it. The moon climbed above the ridge, pale and distant. Lydia turned toward her horse, brushing the dust from the saddle. I should go, she said. Clearwater's not far. I'll stay the night there. He nodded, but his throat felt tight. As she started to mount, his voice stopped her. Lydia. She froze. He walked toward her, boots crunching on the gravel. You said you came for forgiveness, he said quietly. But maybe that ain't what you need. What do I need, Elias? He hesitated, then placed a small, weathered locket in her hand, the one she had given him years ago before she left. Inside was a tiny dried flower. I never threw it away, he said, but I reckon it's time I did. She opened it, trembling. It's still whole. Yeah, but that don't mean it's alive. Her tears fell silently as she closed the locket. Neither am I, not really. They stood there again, under the old arrow sign. 2 souls, 2 paths, and the desert between them. He finally touched his hat brim. Safe travels, Mrs. Monroe. She looked at him for a long, unbearable moment. Goodbye, Ranger. Then she turned her horse and rode east, the arrow sign creaking above her. Elias watched her disappear into the dusk until the horizon swallowed her whole. The wind came back, colder now. The arrow pointed toward Clearwater, but Elias turned the other way, back into the wilderness, where the stars burned and the past could not follow. He never looked back. Where the wind ends. The next morning, the wind came howling down from the canyons, like a ghost looking for its name. Clearwater lay quiet beneath the early sun, its streets coated in gold dust. A few wagons rolled slowly, wheels squeaking, the sound of hammering from the blacksmith echoing between the wooden storefronts. Elias Ward rode in slow. He hadn't planned to. He'd meant to keep riding north, away from the memories, away from her. But something in his chest refused to rest, a feeling that wouldn't let him go until he'd made peace with what the night had left behind. His horse stopped by the saloon porch. The old sign creaked, the silver cactus. Elias dismounted, dusting off his coat. Heads turned. Everyone in Clearwater knew the Ranger, and everyone knew what silence followed him. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and coffee. The piano stood quiet. No one dared play this early. He walked to the counter, nodded at the barkeep. Coffee, he said. Strong. The man poured it, eyes glancing nervously toward the corner table, where Sheriff Cole sat, reading the telegram that had just come in. Cole looked up, his face lined from years of dust and law. Heard you were back, he said. Just passing through, Elias replied. Cole studied him, then set the telegram down. You might want to stay a while. Trouble's brewing near the river bend. Elias sighed. There's always trouble somewhere. The sheriff leaned forward. This ain't the usual kind. It's Cal Monroe's men. Elias froze. Cole went on. Monroe's been dead 6 months, but his brother, Travis, runs the old ranch now. Word is, he blames Lydia for everything. Says she took gold from the family vault before she left. He's been hunting her since dawn. The mug in Elias's hand stopped midair. You sure of that? Cole nodded grimly. She came through town last night. Spent the night at the inn. Left early this morning. Alone. Elias didn't say a word. He just set his coffee down, tipped his hat, and walked out. The sun was barely up when he reached the edge of town. Tracks were fresh in the sand, small hooves ahead, 3 riders behind. He recognized Lydia's mare by the distinctive pattern of the shoe. She'd had it repaired herself, years ago, with a nail pattern only she used. He followed fast, the wind cutting sharp. The trail led toward the canyons west of Clearwater, a place of jagged stone, where echoes carried longer than prayers. By noon, the world had turned to fire. Elias rode hard, dust coating his face. The tracks began to weave. Faster now, she was running. He caught sight of movement far ahead. 3 riders splitting off to flank her. "Damn it," he muttered, spurring his horse. Gunfire cracked across the dry air. Lydia ducked low in her saddle as a bullet struck the rocks beside her. Her heart pounded. The canyon twisted ahead, narrowing to a pass. She thought she could outrun them. She was wrong. A voice echoed behind her. "Stop, Lydia. Ain't nowhere left to go." Travis Monroe, Cal's younger brother. Cruel where his brother had been cunning. He'd always had a snake's smile. She urged the mare faster, tears mixing with dust. "Not yet," she whispered. "Not yet." A shot whistled past her arm. She cried out but didn't stop. The canyon walls closed in. Dead end ahead. Elias reached the ridge, just as he saw her horse skid to a halt near the canyon wall. 3 riders surrounded her, guns drawn. His hand went to his revolver, but he didn't draw. Not yet. He had one chance, one clean moment. The wind shifted. He saw Lydia glance up toward the ridge, as if she'd felt him there. Their eyes met, across distance, across years. She didn't call out. She just nodded, as if she knew he'd come. Elias exhaled. Then he drew. The first shot rang like thunder. One of Travis's men dropped before his gun cleared the holster. The second spun his horse, trying to find the source. But Elias was already firing again, dust flying, echo chasing echo. Travis cursed, dragging Lydia from her horse. "He's here. The damn ranger's here." Elias dismounted in one motion, rolling behind a boulder as bullets slammed into the stone. He waited, steady, calm, his eyes tracing the sound. 1 breath. 2. Then he leaned out, fired once. Travis's last man fell. Only Travis remained, dragging Lydia toward the wall, his pistol pressed against her ribs. "Come out, Ranger." Travis shouted. "You take another step, and I'll kill her like the dog she is." Elias straightened slowly, revolver lowered. "You don't want to do that, son." "I do," Travis snarled. "You took my brother's woman. She took our gold. You both deserve to die." Lydia struggled. "He's lying, Elias. There was no gold." "I know," Elias said softly. "I believe you." Travis sneered. "Sweet. Then die together." The moment stretched thin as glass. Elias's hand hovered near his belt, but his eyes stayed on hers, steady, unbroken. "When I say drop," he whispered. "Drop." "What?" she mouthed. He stepped forward, gun loose at his side. "Let her go, Travis. She's done no harm." "Stay back." Travis barked, finger tightening. Elias's eyes flicked once, left, then right. Wind blew grit across the ground. He moved first. A single flash, a thunderclap, 2 shots at once. The silence that followed was worse than the gunfire. Travis stumbled back, clutching his chest, eyes wide with disbelief before collapsing into the dust. Elias stood still, then slowly dropped to one knee. His hand went to his side, coming away wet with red. Lydia screamed. "Elias!" She rushed to him, catching him before he fell. His hat tumbled, landing beside the arrow-shaped shadow cast by the canyon wall. "No," she whispered, pressing her hands over the wound. "No, you're fine. You're going to be fine." He managed a faint smile. "Reckon I've had worse." "Don't," she said, tears spilling. "Don't talk. We can ride back to Clearwater." "Coal can. Too far," he murmured. "You know it." She shook her head violently. "Don't you dare. Not after I found you again. Not after all this." Elias coughed, blood at his lip. "Guess I found you first." She laughed through her tears, holding him closer. Always the stubborn one. The wind picked up, soft, almost tender, lifting the dust around them like smoke. Lydia leaned her forehead against his. "Why'd you come, Elias? You could have kept riding." He took a slow breath. "Couldn't let the desert take you. Not again." Her hand trembled as she brushed the hair from his face. "I should have stayed with you." He looked at her then, clear, steady, even as his strength slipped away. "You were the only thing I ever waited for, Lydia. And I'd do it again." She kissed him then, slow, desperate, as if to hold the life in him. When she pulled back, his eyes were still open, still fixed on her, but fading. "Tell me," she whispered. "Tell me you forgive me now." He tried to speak. No sound came, only a faint nod. Then the last of the light left his eyes, like a star burning out quietly in the dawn. The canyon fell silent. Lydia stayed there long after the wind died, cradling him in her arms as the sun climbed high. His badge glinted faintly in the light, the silver star that had outlived everything but his heart. When Sheriff Cole and the posse arrived hours later, they found her still there, still holding him, her dress stained with dust and blood. Cole dismounted quietly. "Lydia," he said softly, "let him rest." She looked up at him, her face pale but calm. "He's at rest," she whispered. "He's where he always wanted to be." They buried Elias Ward by the old arrow sign that night, the same place he'd waited all those years. The wind carried wildflower seeds over his grave, the desert's only gift. Lydia placed the locket, the same one he had returned to her, atop the mound of earth. Inside was the dried flower, still whole. Epilogue. Years later, travelers riding through Clearwater's Edge would sometimes see a woman standing by the crossroads, veil lifted in the wind, hand resting on the old wooden post where the arrow pointed east. No one knew her name, but they said she came every spring, the same day, same hour, when the bluebonnets bloomed and the sky burned gold. They said she always whispered the same words before she left. "He waited for me. Now I wait for him." And when the wind blew through the canyon, it carried her voice softly across the plains, mingling with the creak of the old arrow sign, the only witness to a love that time could never bury.